on the Paycheck Protection Program. So there's been a lot of news this week about the Paycheck Protection Program, and if you've been following along, you know the program ran out of money last week. I believe on Thursday, the initial $349 billion was gone. Currently, there's a bill moving through Congress to allocate more funds, and it has passed the Senate. They're speculating it could pass the House as soon as tomorrow. But if you go to the SBA website right now, it's going to say we're out of funds due to a funding lapse. But in the meantime, I know some people got their application in, and I'm hearing the funds that are coming may go fast. So if you're still thinking about applying, I would still get your application into your lender as soon as you can, and watch my previous 8 videos about some of the requirements and things you want to watch for as you're applying. But today I wanted to talk briefly a little bit more about these SBA interim final rules. And for those who've started to receive your loan proceeds, a reminder to look at the allowable use of the funds going forward so that you can qualify for that maximum loan forgiveness under the program. And again, remember, you can use the funds for payroll costs, rent, and certain covered utilities for the 8-week period starting on the date you receive your loan proceeds. But one thing to note about the payroll costs, I've gone over this before, but you cannot use it for any employee whose principal place of residence is overseas. So you have to use it to pay US-based employees. Keep that in mind if you're a company with people working remotely from different locations. And a reminder, the interest rate is 1%. Now I want to jump ahead because some of my people I'm talking to are starting to receive their loans. So you want to focus on some of the requirements of these loans. And in this interim final rule from the SBA, I'm putting a link in this video. It's on the SBA website. It came out April 15th, and the comment period is open until May 15th. So if you have comments to submit, get them in that comment period. But the question is, when will I have to begin paying principal and interest on my PPP loan? Their answer is you will not have to make any payments on the 6 months following the date of disbursement of the loan. Okay, so if you apply for the loan, the date the money actually gets dispersed to you in your account, that's going to be the date of disbursement. 6 months from that date, a payment is due. However, interest will accrue on the PPP loan during that 6-month period. So you get the money, it goes in your bank account. 6 months later, the first payment's due. Interest starts accruing on day one, and again, that's 1%. The act allows the SBA to defer loan payments for up to 1 year, but they determined 6-month deferment was appropriate. But what you want to do is use the loan funds for the covered reasons listed in the act and then apply for that loan forgiveness. But the SBA goes a little bit more into here how they came up with that 75% number. You'll recall I talked about how they said they want 75% of the funds to be used on payroll costs, not on rent and utilities. And they say here, the amount of the loan forgiveness. Can my PPP loan be forgiven in whole or in part? The amount of loan forgiveness can be up to the full principal amount of the loan and any accrued interest. That is, if the borrower uses the loan for forgivable purposes described below. The actual loan forgiveness will depend again on those costs of payroll and rent and utilities. And they define in these rules, look through it, you have to have a mortgage payment obligations incurred before February 15, 2020, rent payments on leases dated before February 15, 2020, and utility payments under service agreements dated before February 15, 2020. Over the 8-week period following the date of the loan. So again, get the loan and then look at what you can pay with it after that. However, not more than 25% of the loan forgiveness amount may be attributable to non-payroll costs. So again, they want you to use 75% at least on payroll. And they go into this reasoning a little more in this rule. It says, while the Act, that's the CARES Act, provides that borrowers are eligible for forgiveness in an amount equal to the sum of payroll costs and any payments of mortgage interest, rent, and utilities, the administrator has determined that the non-payroll portion of the forgivable loan amount should be limited to effectuate the core purpose of the statute and ensure finite program resources. And here they come up to how they get to that 75%. The administrator determined in consultation with the secretary that 75% is an appropriate percentage in light of the Act's overarching purpose. Furthermore, they believe that this threshold is consistent with the structure of the Act. So here's the key, which provides a loan amount, 75% of which is equivalent to 8 weeks of payroll. 8 weeks divided by 2.5 months equals 56 days, divided by 76 days equals 74%, rounded up to 75%. So that's where they get that 75% from, which, again, some lawyers have pointed out is not in the Act, but that's where they're getting that goal of the payroll. And I know this is tough on businesses that have high overhead costs, but maybe not a high payroll, like a gym or some other business with a lot of the costs into fixed assets, but then don't necessarily have the high payroll costs. But it seems here the intent of the Act was to pay employees with the money, and that's what they're going with the 75%. So I just found that nugget in the interim rule today to provide some clarity to you asking about that. And that's the math on where they're getting to that 75% number. Now, quick summary again, reminder, you can use it on payroll costs as defined in the Act, and in these rules, they put it in stuff. I'm not going to read them all again. Rent payments, utility payments, and interest payments on any other debt obligations that were incurred before February 15th, 2020. Okay, also the other quick thing today, they get a little bit into the EIDL loan if you applied and got that grant. You can use it for refinancing an SBA EIDL loan made between January 31, 2020 and April 3rd, 2020. So if you got an EIDL loan in that period, you can refinance it into the PPP. If you received one through April 3rd, you can apply for a PPP loan. However, if your EIDL loan was not used for payroll costs, it does not affect your eligibility for PPP loan. So for those of you who got an EIDL, look at this section into the interim final rules, how they play together. If your EIDL loan was used for payroll costs, your PPP loan must be used to refinance your EIDL loan, okay? So if you got that EIDL before April 3rd and you use it on payroll, you got to refinance it. And then here it also says proceeds from any advance up to $10,000 on the EIDL loan will be deducted from the loan forgiveness amount on the PPP loan. And then again, they say, however, 75% of the PPP loan should be used on loan forgiveness. Now, one other quick hit here. In the news this week, you've seen Shake Shack returning the money, Ruth Chris, these big companies that were getting the money, and then there was the public uproar, and people were saying, wait, could they make that good faith certification? They really need the funds. And the SBA is saying, no, those businesses really aren't supposed to do this because they have access to capital markets. As a publicly traded company, they can raise money that way. But a reminder to everyone here, what happens if PPP loan funds are misused? If you use PPP funds for an unauthorized purpose, SBA will direct you to repay those amounts. If you knowingly use the funds for unauthorized purposes, you will be subject to additional liability such as charges for fraud. Okay? So you want to know the rules here and follow them, because they are going to go after people who misuse these funds. And unfortunately, we know that will happen. So that's today's update on the Paycheck Protection Program. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, be well, and we'll see you next time.